Do you want to improve at a quicker pace? Check out GITGUDRacing.com, where I'm offering the most accessible coaching sessions on the market.
Now for the track guide. For turn 1, for braking, I'm using the 50 marker board as a reference. I'm looking at the 50 and I plan to brake before the 50, and I also don't use this curb on the left side. This curb is very bumpy, and because of that, especially because of this track has 3D curbs, all these bumps, you're gonna feel them differently, and the grip levels are gonna be a bit differently as well, because the tires, instead of being more flat, let's say, they go up and down, up and down. It's like a wave, and the tires aren't making contact at all times with the tarmac. And because of this up and down movement, the braking efficiency will be affected. So I'm not using this part of the track to brake. I'm not going past this curb to brake on the red, even though it's not an off track, just because you will have the right side of the tires. You will have the right tires on this curb. So there's no way around it. You can't put the car in a way that you won't hit this curve while braking and without getting an 1x. So even if you will manage to brake with another car, just for the sake of the discussion, not on this curve, whenever you're turning in, you'll still going over this curve, and it will unsettle the car. So avoid this curve completely, brake before the 50, so applying the brakes around here, and you can also use this white line before the 50, this white line. I'm not actually using it, but I see now that I brake at the white line, so slightly past it, applying the brakes. You can use this reference as well, but mostly look at the 50. And when going into this corner, I noticed by doing a lot of laps that you can gain a lot of time into turn 1 by just forcing the car, braking harder, getting early on power, use a lot of steering angle, but that will just overheat the tires. In the long run, it's not gonna be efficient. For one lap, for a quali lap or a hot lap, maybe it's gonna be efficient, but in this lap, I did mostly what it seems to be like a normal race lap, so not pushing it to the extremes. So what I'm doing, I'm trail braking, and I plan to trail brake up until I get very late to this curb. You want to apex as late as possible and stay close to this curb, and then go back on power, but don't use a lot of steering angle. I used 90 degrees for a moment, but then I quickly corrected, because you don't want to have the car more on the left side and then force it to the right. It's okay if you're gonna lose a bit of time, but you will use less steering and having the car more in the middle of the track. That's gonna be a bit more efficient for a whole race stint. So as you see here, I lost 0.04 compared with my previous lap in which I forced more. So I think this approach is gonna be better. Now going into the next corner, aligning ourselves with this curb, and the moment that I'm hearing the rev limiter blimping, that's the moment in which I turn. So that is my turning point. I'm using the fixed setup, by the way. So the rev limiter, I'm gonna play this sequence so you can hear it. The rev limiter is going crazy, then I turn and I add just a bit of trail brake, right now 3%, 4%, 5%. And the goal here in first sector with this section, and it's almost a theme in this track, is to go very close to these curbs and focus on the exit, not the entry. So go slow in, fast out. Slow the car down to the point that you're really close to these curbs, then put the power down confidently. Same here. I'm just going to 100%, having the car more in the middle of the track, then dropping the throttle and keeping it as close as I can. Like right now I'm very close with the tires and putting the power down, because you're gonna gain on the exit. As you can see here, you're gonna gain on the exit by being able to have this shape on throttle, like almost vertical, going very quickly to 100% on the exit. Now for the next corner, I'm using this curb as well. I use it to open up the track, so mostly aligning myself with the grass right here. And I don't have a reference point for braking. To me, I brake what it feels like in the middle of this curb, then downshifting very quickly to 4th gear, because you want to keep the momentum rolling, you want to get the rotation earlier when you turn in. So if you are able to downshift very quickly, you will be able to generate some of the rotation on the initial turn in. So you will make your life easier when you're getting closer to the apex if you will able to basically make the rears a bit unstable on entry. So downshifting as quickly as I can to 4th gear, now trailing very close to this curb. You can use it a bit because this curb is not that it won't make the car so much unstable. You can use it, then putting the power down 100%, and I hold 100% just for a few moments while I'm getting closer to this curb, and then I'm gonna drop it. And again, I want to focus here, slow in, fast out. So right now I'm plus 0.08, but you will see that on the exit I'm gonna gain a lot. So I'm going slowly, and then I'm putting the power down very early, and then I'm gaining on the exit using all this curb here. So it's a theme for this part of the track here as well. I use as a reference point for braking and turn in the moment in which I see a bit clear this grass that goes downhill. So I'm looking at this part, I'm looking at the apex, and when I start seeing the apex and the grass, I mean not the apex but the curbing, the beginning of the curbing, this white part and the grass more clearly, that's the moment in which I'm turning and applying a small trail brake into the 5th gear, still trailing. I want to cut here as much as I can. So at this point you see I'm steering like this because my goal is to follow the grass almost, and then putting the power down, because from this point it's gonna be flat out. In my mind it's flat out from this point. So 100% confidently. Now here, use this curb to apex. I do a small lift here, but just a small one. I was a bit afraid that I'm gonna get the off track, although seeing this part of the track probably I wouldn't have, but just a small confidence lift. And now this section is important. You want to bring your car to this curb, but not put the tires on this curb. If you're gonna put the tires on the curb, whenever you're gonna turn in, you're gonna feel the bumps in the steering wheel, in the force feedback, because you're taking this 3D curb, and the car won't turn as much as it could. So avoid this curb completely, align yourself with the beginning of the curb with the white line, then putting the power down and apexing around as late as you can around this curb. You can even touch it a bit. I don't recommend going over it. Even this touch that I did here, I think it was a bit too much, because you will see, so right now I'm gaining, but you will see that it brings me to an uncomfortable position here because I'm a bit on this curb and I don't like it. So ideally you will have the car just a bit more to the right, even though it sounds crazy that you don't want to open up as much. These curbings are, especially with a fixed setup, I found that these curbings doesn't help that much. So I wouldn't go to the sand here, to the gravel. I would stay to the white line. Now going into this corner, it's a flat out corner, but it's super important to apex late. I will show you here how I lose because I'm apexing a bit earlier. So the whole point here is to apex as late as you can, even later than this. You should aim to apex at the end of this green, the green on the right side. Because if you're gonna apex early, then look, I'm gonna lose time on the exit. I lost 0.02, but it adds up, especially when you're learning the track. You will lose a lot of time if you're gonna apex early. You probably will run out of track. But there's one more important thing here, and one mistake that I do. On the exit, because I apex a bit early, I know that early apex equals wide exit. So because I don't want to get the off track, because I don't want to go too wide on the exit, I use a lot of steering angle. And as a result, I scrub speed. And I should have used this part of the track actually. So the apex was not that bad, but it wasn't perfect. Like, I knew I could apex a bit later, and because of that I didn't use the exit. So I used a lot of steering angle. And this is very important when you're learning this track. You should aim, like the purpose of this sector, which is flat out, is to use the least amount of steering angle. The least amount of steering angle, because that will force you to take the proper apexes. Now, it wasn't the end of the world, but more tire wear, more temps, and less speed. So it will add up lap after lap, lap after lap. In a race, it's gonna add up. Now, going into the next corner, for braking, I use as a reference the moment in which the car goes downhill, and I almost can see the curb. So it's a fine line, because few frames now, like 3 frames more forward, now you see the curb. You want to brake before you see it. So you will time it that few frames before you see it, you're gonna apply the brakes. You're gonna brake initially on a straight line. Then I'm downshifting to third whenever I get closer and closer to this yellow curb, putting the power down, and you don't need to over prepare this corner. You don't need to slow the car down so that you bring the car on the right side, so you can do it from this part of the track quite nicely. You will carry the speed. So immediately turning in, and the moment that I'm stepping on this curb, so to speak, I'm dropping the throttle and just putting back again. So it's a small lift. I mean, it's not a small lift, you will almost do 100% lift, but it's very quick. It happens very quickly. You want to apex around these yellow sausage curbs, following them. You can even touch them a bit, it won't be very bad. They're not that big. So putting the power down again, using all this track, and easily get an off track here. The off track limit is not having the tires near the gravel trap. It's more having the tires onto the green, but you can't use like 5% of this green. You can't use all these parts, so be mindful of that. Now, going into the next corner, this one is a very long corner, very long. So after I'm passing the 50-meter board, I try to apex like a double apex corner almost. So I'm looking here, I pass the 50, and at this building, at this orange cone onto the left, I'm applying the brakes. And you're not gonna brake that hard, but you're gonna downshift very quickly. So I'm going fourth, I'm trailing, and I try to take a V-shaped line in which I push the car more wider, so I carry more speed, and then I bring it back and use all the track. So the common mistake here will be to follow this curb and be stuck on this curb, like following it very closely. You should drift off just a bit, so apex early, drift off a bit, and then you're gonna put the power down early and you're gonna gain on the exit. So the V-shaped line with this car, I think, is gonna be quicker than the U-shaped line, just because you will always have one tire on this curb if you're gonna apex very close, and that tire on the curb is gonna make more difficult getting on throttle. Now, these corners right here, you must imagine that it's almost a straight line, like you take them almost in a straight line. So cut as much as you can, so you will use the least amount of steering angle. And for the final corner, again, very long corner, I'm looking at the 50, and after the 50, I'm applying the brakes. It's not an exact reference, so it's not so consistent for me, but it's definitely after the 50. Give it one more second after the 50, applying the brakes, and I miss the apex here. I carry a lot of speed to make up for that, but ideally you want to apex around here. To meet the curb once is the same thing as the previous corner, double apex, then track out a bit wider, then apex again, and holding the throttle flat. And because it's such a long straight, it's important to not have hesitations on throttle. So if you're gonna have a zigzag pattern and then going to 100%, you're gonna lose a lot of time. Here you should think of braking and going back on throttle like an on-off switch. It's gonna happen instantly. So I'm trailing into the lower 3-5%, and then I'm almost mashing the throttle. And also, again, very important to treat it as a double apex corner. So hitting it once, going wider, hitting it twice, and staying on power. So you're gonna gain on exit. And in short, that's a track guide in F3 for Mugello. I wish you a great week ahead, and I will see you this week racing this track. So bye bye.